The massive alien ship hung in space like a metal mountain above Earth. Ambassador Veltar stood in the center of the Galactic Council chambers on Centauri Prime, his four arms crossed as he read the message that had just arrived from the human homeworld. The other council members waited in silence, their various forms of breathing creating a strange symphony in the vast hall. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Earth Defense Force vessel Titan's Edge, watching the long-range sensors. With growing concern, more alien ships appeared every hour at the edge of human space. The fleet was getting bigger and bigger, and everyone knew what that meant. Lieutenant Amy Walsh turned from her communication station, her face pale but determined. "Captain, we just received the final message from the council delegation," she said, her voice cutting through the quiet hum of the bridge systems. Jake nodded and activated the main screen. The image of Ambassador Veltar appeared, his reptilian features showing no emotion as he spoke in perfect English. "People of Earth, the Galactic Council has been more than patient with your species. We have offered you protection, guidance, and a place among the civilized worlds of the galaxy. All we ask in return is simple compliance with galactic law." The message continued as Jake felt his jaw tighten. "You must disarm all military vessels and surrender your weapons technology to Council oversight. You must share all scientific knowledge and accept our guidance in technological development. Most importantly, you must acknowledge that galactic law supersedes all human governments and legal systems. You have 24 hours to provide your final answer." On Earth, President Linda Harper stood before the largest gathering of world leaders in human history. The Global Defense Coalition had representatives from every nation, and for the first time since humans had learned to fight, they all agreed on something. The answer was simple, and it came from every corner of the planet. "We reject your terms," President Harper said into the cameras that would broadcast her words across the solar system. "Earth will not bow to any foreign power, whether they come from across an ocean or across the galaxy. We choose freedom." Back on Centauri Prime, the council members could not understand what they had just heard. In their experience, no species had ever rejected the generous offer of council protection. For over 1,000 years, every newly discovered civilization had eventually seen the wisdom of joining the galactic community under council guidance. "This is impossible," whispered Council Prime Zefkal, his massive insectoid head turning toward Veltar. "They must not understand the benefits we offer. Perhaps their translation systems are flawed." Veltar shook his head slowly. "I have studied these humans for 5 years. Their language skills are adequate. They understand exactly what we are offering, and they are choosing to refuse it." Commander Rick Coleman sat in the underground command center beneath the Colorado mountains, reviewing intelligence reports that painted a grim picture. The alien fleet gathering at the edge of human space now numbered over 200 ships. Each vessel was larger and more advanced than anything humans had ever built, but Rick had been preparing for this day since the first alien contact 5 years ago. While diplomats had talked and politicians had made speeches, military engineers had been busy. Hidden factories had been working around the clock. Secret research facilities had been reverse engineering every piece of alien technology they could get their hands on. "Sir," his aide Major Carl Brooks said as he entered the room, "the President wants to know if we're really ready for this." Rick looked at the displays showing human military assets scattered across the solar system. It wasn't much compared to what was coming, but it would have to be enough. "Tell the President that we've done everything we can. The rest is up to them." On the mining colony of New Austin, Colonel Sam Bennett received the same message that was going out to every human military unit in space. The aliens were coming, and there would be no more talking. He looked out at the 30,000 civilians who had made this asteroid their home and wondered how many of them would survive what was about to happen. Dr. Alex Cheen worked frantically in his laboratory on Luna, the moon's low gravity allowing him to move between workstations with quick jumps. His team had been analyzing alien shield technology for months, looking for any weakness they could find. Time was running out, but they might have found something useful. The frequency variations. Follow a predictable pattern, he told his assistant Lisa Park. If we can time our weapons fire correctly, we might be able to punch through their defenses. Captain Lisa Turner stood on the bridge of her converted mining ship, looking at the 11 other vessels that made up the New Austin Defense Fleet. 3 of them were actual military ships, but the rest were civilian vessels that had been hastily armed with whatever weapons they could mount. "Captain," her communications officer reported, "we're receiving movement signals from the edge of the system. The aliens are coming." Lisa nodded and opened a channel to the other ships. "This is Turner. Remember what we talked about? We hit them fast, we hit them hard, and we don't give up until the last ship is gone. These people are counting on us." Back in the council chambers, Veltar was explaining human behavior to increasingly confused alien leaders. They appear to have a concept called independence that overrides their survival instinct. They would rather fight and die than submit to authority they do not recognize. "This is madness," said Council Member Quinder, her blue skin rippling with agitation. "No rational species would choose extinction over cooperation." "I am beginning to suspect," Veltar said quietly, "that humans may not be rational by our standards." President Harper's final message was broadcast across all human colonies and space stations. It was simple and direct, the kind of message that humans had been sending to tyrants for thousands of years. To the Galactic Council and all who serve them, know this: we are not your subjects. We will not be your slaves. We choose independence over your peace, freedom over your protection, and honor over survival. Come if you must, but know that every step you take into human space will be earned in blood. The message ended, and across human space, military units prepared for war. In the council chambers, alien leaders who had never faced real resistance in their lives began to understand that they were about to learn what it meant to fight humanity. Council War Prime Zethkal stood before the tactical display showing the human colony of New Austin. The asteroid mining facility housed 30,000 humans and would serve as the perfect example of galactic might. 50 council vessels had been assigned to this simple demonstration, more than enough to convince these stubborn primitives of their foolishness. "Begin the approach," he ordered, his mandibles clicking with satisfaction. "Decloak at optimal intimidation range and wait for their surrender. This should take no more than a few minutes." Colonel Sam Bennett watched the alien ships materialize on his screens like ghosts becoming solid. The enemy vessels were massive, each one larger than anything in the human fleet. Their hulls gleamed with advanced armor and weapons that could reduce his small defense force to scrap metal in seconds. "All stations, this is Bennett," he said into his communicator. "The aliens are here. You all know what to do." Instead of the expected panic and desperate calls for mercy, the aliens received something they had never encountered before. Captain Lisa Turner's voice came across all communication channels, clear and defiant. "Alien vessels, this is the new Austin Defense Force. You are not welcome here. Turn around and leave our system or we will destroy you." On the council flagship, War Prime Zethkal stared at his communication officer in confusion. "They are threatening us? 12 primitive vessels against 50 of our finest ships?" "Sir," his tactical officer reported with obvious bewilderment, "the human ships are moving to attack formation. They appear to be preparing for battle." The War Prime had studied the records of countless species who had joined the council over the centuries. Every single one had followed the same pattern when faced with superior force. First came denial, then desperate negotiation, then acceptance of the inevitable. None had ever simply attacked. Captain Lisa Turner gave the order that would change galactic history. "All ships, attack pattern Delta. Target the largest vessel and concentrate fire." The converted mining ships accelerated toward the alien fleet, with the same determination their crews had once used to hunt valuable asteroids. The 3 military frigates took point while the civilian vessels spread out in a pattern designed to confuse enemy targeting systems. Dr. Alex Chion's research proved its worth in the first exchange of fire. The human weapons, carefully timed to match alien shield frequencies, punched through council defenses with unexpected effectiveness. The massive alien dreadnought shuddered as human kinetic rounds slammed into its hull. "Impossible," whispered the alien tactical officer as damage reports flooded in. "These weapons should not penetrate our shields." Major Carl Brooks coordinated the battle from his command post, watching as human ships closed to point-blank range. With the alien vessels? This was the part that no alien strategist had predicted because no civilized species would attempt such a suicidal maneuver. The mining ship Rocky Mountain, its hull cracked and atmosphere venting, continued its attack. Run even as alien fire tore through its structure. Captain Joe Watson, his bridge filled with smoke and sparks, aimed his damaged vessel directly at the Council cruiser. "This is Watson to all ships," he said calmly as his engines overloaded. Ramming speed. The Rocky Mountain struck the alien cruiser amidships at full acceleration. Both vessels disappeared in a brilliant explosion that lit up the asteroid field. Across the battlefield, human ships pressed their attacks with the same desperate courage. Council War Prime Zethkal watched his tactical display with growing horror as his ships took damage from weapons that should have been ineffective. Worse still, the humans seemed to have no concept of retreat or surrender. When their ships were disabled, they used them as weapons. "Sir," his communication officer reported, "we are receiving surrender signals from the human vessels." "Finally," the War Prime said with relief. "Accept their surrender and prepare boarding parties to secure their technology." But the surrender signals were not what they seemed. Captain Maria Santos, her frigate burning and powerless, activated her ship's self-destruct sequence rather than allow it to be captured. "For Earth," she said, as her ship became a new star, the pattern repeated across the battlefield as human. Crews chose destruction over capture. The aliens, accustomed to taking prisoners and salvaging technology, found themselves facing opponents who would rather die than be taken alive. Dr. Ruth Miller monitored the battle from Earth, analyzing every piece of data transmitted from the combat zone. What she saw confirmed her worst fears about galactic civilization. The alien crews fought with precision but no passion, following tactical doctrine without innovation or adaptability. "They're like machines," she told her assistant. "Efficient, but predictable. Our people are thinking faster than theirs." Commander Rick Coleman received combat reports that painted a picture of organized chaos. Human ships were taking heavy losses, but they were giving better than they got. The aliens had expected to lose perhaps one or two vessels to demonstrate their overwhelming superiority. Instead, they were losing ships at an alarming rate. Captain Lisa Turner, her mining ship torn and bleeding atmosphere, continued to coordinate the defense even as alien fire concentrated on her position. "All remaining ships, focus on the command vessel, take out their leader, and the rest might lose coordination." The human attack intensified as the surviving ships converged on the Council flagship. War Prime Zethkal found himself in the unprecedented position of being the target of a coordinated assault by inferior vessels that should have surrendered hours ago. "Damage to main power coupling," his engineer reported. "Hull breaches on decks. 7 through 12. Shield generators at 40%. "How is this possible?" the War Prime demanded. "They have 12 ships against our 50. 37 ships remaining, sir," his tactical officer corrected quietly. "We have lost 13 vessels to enemy action." The War Prime stared at the display showing the burning wrecks of Council ships scattered throughout the asteroid field. In over 500 years of military service, he had never seen a primitive species inflict such casualties on a Council fleet. Lieutenant Amy Walsh, monitoring communications from the Titan's edge, recorded the alien transmissions for intelligence analysis. The enemy commanders were clearly confused and demoralized by human resistance. Their neat tactical formations had been disrupted by human ships that ignored conventional attack patterns. "They keep talking about honor and proper warfare," Amy reported to Captain Jake Morrison. "I don't think they understand that we're fighting for our homes." The Battle of New Austin ended when the surviving Council ships finally withdrew, leaving behind 18 destroyed or disabled vessels. The human fleet had been reduced to 3 barely functional ships, but they had achieved something unprecedented. In Galactic History, Dr. Alex Chen analyzed the final combat data and realized that humanity had just announced its arrival on the galactic stage in the most dramatic way possible. They came to intimidate us with overwhelming force, he said to his team. Instead, we taught them fear. The surviving alien commanders transmitted their reports back to the Council with shaking hands and voices. The message was simple but devastating to everything the Council believed about primitive species. They fight like madmen. They show no fear of death. Request immediate reinforcements. Council War Prime Zethkal, his flagship limping away from the battlefield, sent his own assessment to the Council leadership. These humans are unlike any species we have encountered. They do not follow rational patterns of behavior. I recommend extreme caution in future engagements. But it was too late for caution. Across human space, defense forces had monitored the battle and learned from it. The message was spreading to every human colony and outpost. The aliens could be hurt, they could be beaten, and they were not as invincible as they pretended to be. The Council emergency session convened on Centauri Prime with representatives from 16 different species, all demanding answers about the disaster at New Austin. Council Supreme Overlord Quandi stood at the center of the Great Hall, his massive form towering over the assembled delegates as reports flooded in from across human space. Admiral Tony Rodriguez coordinated humanity's desperate defense preparations from the command ship Liberty Bell, hidden in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Intelligence reports painted a terrifying picture of Council mobilization as battle fleets from across the galaxy converged on human territory. Sir, his intelligence officer Major Susan Kelly reported, we're tracking over 300 alien vessels moving toward our borders. This isn't a police action anymore, it's an extermination. Fleet. The Vorth delegation sat in rigid formation, their crystalline bodies refracting the chamber's light as they calculated the mathematical probability of human defeat. The Kremak warriors stood with their traditional honor blades displayed, confused by reports of humans who fought without proper ceremony. The Zilani hive mind spoke in unison, their collective voice expressing bewilderment at species that acted as individuals rather than a unified whole. Captain Maria Santos led her strike team through the silent corridors of Kepler Station, a massive Council supply depot that had been left lightly defended due to its location deep in supposedly secure territory. Her team moved with practiced stealth, avoiding the automated security systems that had never been designed to counter human infiltration. Techniques. Target the main computer core, she whispered to Sergeant Bill Connor as they approached the station's central hub. We need to download everything about their logistics network. The data they discovered would change everything about how humans understood the galaxy. The Council had not built their empire through superior technology or enlightened governance. They had done it by systematically suppressing the development of every species they encountered, keeping them dependent and docile. Chief Engineer Bob Jackson worked around the clock in the hidden shipyards of Ceres Station, mass-producing the new Fury-class interceptors that represented humanity's most desperate innovation. The small craft were built for one purpose, getting close enough to alien capital ships to deliver devastating kinetic strikes. How many can we build? Admiral Rodriguez asked during his daily inspection. Bob wiped grease from his hands and looked at the assembly lines where human workers labored without sleep. Maybe 200 before they arrive? It's not enough, but it might give us a chance. The aliens were learning that human tactics defied every principle of civilized warfare. When Council forces attempted to blockade human trade routes, they found themselves facing merchant vessels that had been converted into armed raiders. When they tried to isolate human colonies, they discovered that humans had been secretly building supply caches throughout supposedly empty space. Dr. Ruth Miller made her most important discovery while analyzing genetic samples from captured alien technology. The Council species had been modified over generations to be less aggressive and more compliant. Selective breeding and genetic manipulation had removed the killer instinct that made species dangerous to galactic order. They've been domesticated, she told her research team in amazement. Every single Council species has been turned into A sheep were the only wolves left in the galaxy. Captain Joe Mitchell commanded the asteroid fortresses scattered throughout the outer solar system, hidden bases that had been carved out of space rocks and armed with weapons that violated every treaty the Council had ever written. His crews were volunteers who knew they might never see Earth again. "Remember," he told his gunners as alien scout ships probed the system's edges, "wait for the big targets. Let the small stuff pass and save your shots for the ships that matter." The Council's Grand Fleet assembled at the edge of the Sol system like a metal storm cloud. 300 ships representing the combined military might of galactic civilization, all focused on crushing the human anomaly that threatened everything they had built. Council Supreme Overlord Quandi personally commanded the operation from his flagship, confident that overwhelming force would finally break human resistance. His species had ruled the galaxy for over 2,000 years, and no primitive world had ever successfully defied. Council Authority. Admiral Kate Thompson received the final intelligence reports about the incoming fleet and activated operation. Shattered glass, humanity's last desperate gambit. Across human space, small teams launched simultaneous attacks on Council logistics networks, communication relays, and supply depots. "Hit them everywhere at once," she ordered her scattered commanders. "Make them think we have 10 times more ships than we actually do." Lieutenant Commander Pete Wilson led the most dangerous mission of the war, infiltrating the Council's main communication hub on Titan Station. His team carried experimental computer viruses designed by human programmers who had studied alien systems for years. The viruses were designed to exploit the rigid, predictable nature of Council computer networks. Where human systems were chaotic and adaptable, alien technology followed strict protocols that could be turned against them. On Earth's surface, General Mary Clark activated the global defense network that had been built in secret over 5 years of preparation. Orbital elevators became kinetic weapons, civilian satellites revealed hidden missile batteries, and peaceful research stations transformed into fortified strongholds. "They think they know everything about us," she said to her staff as alien ships began entering the outer system. "Time to show them how wrong they are." Dr. Steve Parker worked from his bunker beneath the Nevada desert, frantically completing humanity's most desperate weapon. The quantum communication network would broadcast evidence of Council oppression to every suppressed species in the galaxy, but it needed time to reach full power. How long? President Harper asked during her final briefing before the aliens. "Arrived? 6 more hours," Steve replied, sweat beading on his forehead. "If we can hold them off for 6 hours, every species in the galaxy will know what the Council really is." The first alien ships entered the solar system like harbingers of doom, their massive hulls reflecting the distant light of the sun. Scout vessels spread out to map human defenses while the main fleet prepared for what should have been a simple extermination campaign. Captain Lisa Turner, promoted after her survival at New Austin, commanded one of the hidden asteroid bases. That would serve as humanity's first line of defense. Her crew consisted of miners, engineers, and volunteers who had never expected to fight a galactic war. "This is it," she told them as alien ships appeared on their sensors. "Everything we've worked for comes down to the next few hours. Make every shot count." The Council commanders expected to find a broken and demoralized enemy. Instead, their advanced scouts encountered prepared defenses and coordinated resistance that spoke of months of careful planning. The humans had not spent their time begging for mercy. They had spent it preparing for war. Reports began flooding back to the Council flagship about human activity across multiple star systems. Bases that intelligence claimed did not exist were launching attacks. Ships that should have been destroyed were appearing in unexpected locations. The primitive species was fighting back with impossible coordination. "How many ships do they actually have?" demanded Council Supreme Overlord Quandi as reports of human raids reached his command center. "Unknown, sir," his intelligence officer replied nervously. "They appear to be everywhere at once." But the most shocking news was yet to come. Deep in Council space, alien species that had been suppressed for generations began receiving human broadcasts detailing the truth about galactic civilization. The message was simple and devastating. If humans could resist, so could they. The Kethmer were the first to act, their warrior culture rekindling as they realized they had been deliberately weakened by their supposed protectors. The Yuldan followed, their ancient pride overcoming generations of enforced humility. One by one, species that had been loyal council members for centuries began to question their place in the galactic order. The war that had begun as a simple police action against a single, primitive species was transforming into something far more dangerous. For the first time in galactic history, the Council faced the possibility of widespread rebellion among their own members. The siege of Earth began with the arrival of the Council Grand Fleet at the edge of the Sol system. Council Supreme Overlord Quandi stood in his command chamber aboard the massive flagship Eternal Order, watching tactical displays that showed over 300 alien vessels forming an impenetrable blockade around humanity's home system. Captain Joe Mitchell floated in the zero-gravity command center of Asteroid Base 7, one of dozens of hidden installations scattered throughout the outer system. His crews had spent months hollowing out space rocks and filling them with weapons that represented humanity's most desperate innovations. "All bases report ready, sir," his communications officer, Sergeant Nancy Ford, reported. "The aliens still don't know we're here." The Council fleet expected to find a conventional defense focused around Earth and its major colonies. Instead, they encountered something that defied every principle of military strategy. The humans had prepared not for a battle, but for a war of attrition that could last for years. Admiral Kate Thompson sat in the hidden command bunker beneath Luna's surface, coordinating Operation Shattered Glass from a facility that officially did not exist. Her screens showed human strike teams launching simultaneous attacks across 16 different star systems, each one designed to cripple Council logistics and communication networks. "Phase 1 is complete," Major Carl Brooks reported from his position at the tactical display. "All primary targets have been hit. The aliens are starting to lose contact with their supply lines." Lieutenant Commander Pete Wilson led his infiltration team through the access tunnels of Titan Station, the Council's main communication hub in the outer system. The facility's alien designers had never imagined that enemies might approach through maintenance shafts barely large enough for human bodies. "Remember," he whispered to his team as they approached the computer core, "we only get one chance at this. The virus needs to reach the main network before their security systems can adapt." The digital weapons carried by Wilson's team represented years of human programming work. The viruses were designed to exploit the rigid nature of Council computer systems, turning their predictability into a fatal weakness. While human networks adapted and evolved, alien technology followed strict protocols that could be subverted. On Earth's surface, General Mary Clark watched as the planet's hidden defenses came online for the first time. Orbital elevators that had appeared to be peaceful trade facilities revealed their true nature as kinetic weapons platforms. Research stations transformed into missile bases. Civilian satellites deployed weapon systems that had been concealed for years. "The aliens think they're attacking a primitive world with basic defenses," she told President Harper during their final briefing. "They're about to learn that every human facility has a secondary military purpose." Dr. Steve Parker's quantum communication array finally reached full power in his hidden bunker beneath the Nevada desert. The system had been built to broadcast on frequencies that would reach every corner of the galaxy, carrying a message that would change the course of galactic history. "Broadcasting now," he announced as the array's massive dishes turned toward deep space. "Evidence of Council oppression is being transmitted to every suppressed species in the galaxy." The message contained detailed records of how the Council had systematically weakened and controlled member species for over 1,000 years. Genetic modifications to reduce aggression, technological suppression to maintain dependence, and economic manipulation to prevent independent development. Captain Maria Santos commanded the stealth raid on Council Supply Depot Gamma, a massive facility that fed the alien war machine. Her converted merchant vessel approached the station disguised as a routine supply ship, its cargo holds filled with human volunteers and enough explosives to level a city. "Remember the plan," she told her boarding teams as they prepared to deploy. "We're not here to capture this station. We're here to make sure the Council never uses it again." The first major battle began when Council scout ships encountered the hidden asteroid fortresses. Captain Lisa Turner's base opened fire from what the aliens had believed to be empty space, her weapons tearing through the lead scout ship's shields and hull. "Contact," she reported to the fleet network as more alien ships moved to investigate. "They know we're here now." The asteroid bases had been positioned to create overlapping fields of fire throughout the outer system. As Council forces moved to eliminate one base, they found themselves under attack from 3 others. The humans had turned the entire solar system into a weapon. Council Supreme Overlord Quandi watched his tactical display with growing concern as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Human raids were disrupting supply lines, communication. Networks were failing, and worst of all, several member species were showing signs of open rebellion. "How many ships are we losing to these raids?" he demanded from his fleet commanders. 47 vessels confirmed destroyed or disabled, replied Warprime Kethvalium, his voice tight with embarrassment. "The humans appear to be using suicide tactics and weapons that violate all civilized warfare protocols." The suicide attacks were the most shocking aspect of human resistance to alien minds. Council species fought to win, but humans fought to deny victory to their enemies. When human ships were disabled, their crews often triggered massive explosions rather than allow their vessels to be captured. Dr. Ruth Miller's research teams on Luna worked frantically to analyze captured alien equipment, looking for any weakness that could be exploited. What they found confirmed humanity's worst fears about the nature of galactic civilization. "Every Council species has been genetically modified for compliance," she reported to Admiral Rodriguez. "They're physically incapable of the kind of sustained aggression we're showing. That's why they don't understand our tactics." The aliens had expected a brief, decisive campaign against a primitive enemy. Instead, they found themselves facing opponents who seemed to have prepared for exactly this type of war. Human bases appeared where intelligence said there should be empty space. Supply convoys were attacked by ships that should not have existed. Lieutenant Amy Walsh coordinated communication intercepts from her station aboard the Liberty Bell, monitoring alien transmissions for intelligence about enemy movements and intentions. What she heard painted a picture of an enemy command structure that was beginning to fracture under unexpected pressure. "Sir," she reported to Admiral Rodriguez, "the aliens are starting to argue among themselves. Some species want to withdraw and negotiate, others want to increase the violence." The greatest shock came when the first reports arrived about rebellions breaking out in Council space. The Kethmer had seized 3 star systems and declared independence from the Council. The Yildan were in open revolt on their homeworld. The Mortaki had destroyed their own compliance centers and were demanding the right to redevelop their military technology. Chief Engineer Bob Jackson's mass production facilities worked around the clock to build more Fury interceptors. Small craft designed to exploit the one advantage humans had over their enemies. Human pilots were willing to take risks that no rational alien would consider. "How many ships?" Admiral Rodriguez asked during his daily inspection of the construction facilities. 300 and climbing, Bob replied, his face haggard from lack of sleep. "But we're running out of trained pilots faster than we can build ships." The solution came from an unexpected source. Civilian volunteers with no military training began stepping forward to pilot the new interceptors. Miners, engineers, teachers, and farmers all volunteered for missions that had survival rates measured in single digits. Captain Joe Mitchell coordinated the defense of the outer system from his hidden command post, watching as alien forces tried to locate and destroy the asteroid fortresses. The Council had committed over half their fleet to hunting down bases that appeared and disappeared like ghosts. "Let them chase us," he told his base commanders during their encrypted briefings. Every hour they spend hunting rocks is an hour they're not attacking Earth. The strategy was working better than anyone had dared hope. The Council fleet was being pulled apart by the need to defend against attacks across multiple systems while simultaneously hunting for hidden human bases throughout the solar system. Dr. Steve Parker's broadcasts were having their intended effect. As reports arrived of chaos spreading throughout Council space, species that had been loyal members for centuries were beginning to demand answers about genetic modifications they had never known existed. "The message is reaching them," he reported to President Harper. "Half the galaxy is starting to question Council authority, but the greatest victory was yet to come." Deep in Council space, the Vorth Collective made a decision that would change everything. Their crystalline minds, devoted to pure logic and calculation, reached an inevitable conclusion about the war against humanity. The Council could not win. Their analysis showed that humanity's resistance was not the desperate thrashing of a doomed species, but the calculated strategy of a people who had been preparing for this war for years. The humans had turned their entire civilization into a weapon, and they were willing to use it regardless of the cost. The galaxy erupted in chaos as species after species threw off Council control, inspired by humanity's stubborn refusal to submit to galactic authority. What had begun as a simple pacification mission had become the largest civil war in galactic history. With battle lines drawn across hundreds of star systems, Admiral Nancy Green commanded the human counteroffensive from her flagship, New Horizons, as Earth's forces pushed out from the solar system to relieve human colonies under siege. Her fleet consisted of every ship humanity could build, repair, or salvage, crewed by volunteers who knew they might never see home again. "Ma'am," her communications officer, Lieutenant Dan Walsh, reported, "we're receiving surrender requests from Council forces in the Alpha Centauri system. They're asking for terms." Nancy stared at the message display in disbelief. For the first time in galactic history, Council military forces were asking a primitive species for mercy. The psychological impact of sustained human resistance had finally broken the myth of alien invincibility. Captain Chris Davis coordinated with his new alien allies as the Kethmore Rebellion spread across their former territory. The warrior species had remembered their ancient pride after generations of enforced pacifism, and they fought with the same desperate courage that had made humans so effective. "Your people have given us back our souls," Kethmore war leader Fakemore told Chris during their joint planning session. "We had forgotten what it meant to fight for something that mattered." The alliance between humans and rebellious Council species created tactical possibilities that neither side could achieve alone. Human innovation combined with alien technology and resources to create new forms of warfare that the remaining Council forces could not counter. Council forces, stretched across dozens of rebellious systems, began suffering defeats as former member species applied human tactics to their own liberation movements. The rigid Council military doctrine that had worked for centuries crumbled against widespread asymmetric warfare and coordinated rebellion. President Harper received a message that no human leader had ever expected to see. The Council was requesting a ceasefire in negotiations. The proud galactic government that had ruled countless species for over a millennium was asking to talk with the primitive humans they had tried to exterminate. "Ma'am," her aide secretary Jennifer Walsh said as she handed over the communication, "they're asking for a neutral meeting place to discuss terms." The negotiations took place aboard the merchant vessel Harmony, hastily converted into a diplomatic facility and positioned at the edge of human space. Both sides approached the talks with the knowledge that the galaxy had been fundamentally changed by the war. Commander Helen Foster represented humanity at the negotiations, carrying with her the collective will of a species that had refused to bow to superior force. Across from her sat Council representatives who were trying to salvage something from the wreckage of their collapsing empire. "Let us be clear about our position," Helen said as the talks began. "Humanity will accept nothing less than complete independence and recognition of our right to exist as a free species. We will not submit to Council authority in any form." The Council delegates, led by Ambassador Veltar, struggled with concepts. that their civilization had never been forced to consider. The idea of negotiating with a species they had intended to subjugate was alien to everything they understood about galactic order. Dr. Paul Johnson presented the scientific evidence that had been gathered during years of research into council methods. His data showed that diversity and conflict, not uniformity and peace, created stronger and more innovative civilizations. Your empire has been weakening itself for over 1,000 years, he explained to the shocked alien delegates. By suppressing natural development and enforcing conformity, you have made every member species dependent and vulnerable. The evidence was undeniable. Human innovation had advanced further in 5 years of desperate preparation than most council species had achieved in centuries of guided development. The suppression of natural aggression and competition had created a galaxy of sheep, ruled by wolves who had forgotten how to fight. Captain Susan Miller commanded the first human vessel to enter former council space under the new treaty arrangements. Her ship, the Earth's Pride, carried diplomats and trade representatives to worlds that were just beginning to rediscover their own independence. The council faced a choice between complete collapse and fundamental reform. Species that had been loyal members for centuries were demanding the right to govern themselves. Others wanted access to the human military advisors who had taught the galaxy how to resist oppression. The old order is dead, Valtar admitted during one of the final negotiation sessions. We can either adapt to the new reality or watch our civilization destroy itself in civil war. The treaty that emerged from months of difficult negotiations established principles that had never existed in galactic law. Species had the right to refuse council membership. Technological development could not be artificially restricted. Most importantly, no government could claim authority over another species without their explicit consent. Dr. Ruth Miller's genetic research provided the foundation for the most controversial part of the agreement. Council species would be allowed to reverse the genetic modifications that had been imposed on them over generations, returning to their natural state of development. Some of you may choose to remain as you are, she explained to the council delegates. Others may want to rediscover what your species was like before the modifications. The choice must be yours to make. The Vorth Collective was the first to request genetic restoration, their logical minds calculating that their enhanced compliance had made them vulnerable to exactly the kind of manipulation they had experienced. Other species followed, creating a galaxy-wide movement toward biological independence. Admiral Tony Rodriguez oversaw the establishment of the Free Species Alliance, a voluntary organization based on mutual respect rather than enforced submission. The new government's headquarters was built on a space station jointly constructed by humans and former council members. We're not trying to replace the council's empire with our own, he explained to representatives from dozens of species. We're trying to create something that has never existed before, a truly voluntary association of independent peoples. The transformation was not without its problems. Some council species, too deeply modified to survive without guidance, required extensive support to develop independent governments. Others struggled with the concept of self-determination after centuries of being told what to do. Captain Joe Mitchell, promoted to admiral after his defense of the outer system, commanded the new alliance fleet that protected species making the transition to independence. His ships included vessels from a dozen different worlds, all working together to ensure that freedom had a chance to take root. The most dramatic change came on Earth itself, which had become the unofficial capital of the new galactic order. Representatives from hundreds of species arrived to study human government, military tactics, and social organization. General Mary Clark established the Alliance Military Academy on Luna, where officers from across the galaxy learned the principles of asymmetric warfare and defensive strategy that had made human resistance so effective. The goal is not to create soldiers, she told each new class of cadets. The goal is to create people who will never again allow themselves to be enslaved. Dr. Steve Parker's communication networks had evolved into the Galactic Information Service, broadcasting news and educational content to every world in known space. For the first time in galactic history, No government could control what its citizens learned about the wider universe. President Harper, now serving her second term as leader of Earth's government, addressed the first General Assembly of the Free Species Alliance. The gathering included representatives from over 200 worlds, many of them speaking in their own languages for the first time in generations. "We did not fight this war to become conquerors," she said to the assembled delegates. "We fought to prove that free peoples cannot be defeated by those who mistake compliance for strength." The former council worlds slowly adapted to their new reality. Some chose to maintain their modified genetics and peaceful cultures, while others embraced the return to their natural state. The diversity that had been suppressed for centuries began to flourish again. Captain Lisa Turner, now commanding a joint human-alien exploration vessel, led missions to discover new species and ensure they were contacted as equals rather than subjects. The galaxy was larger than anyone had imagined, with countless worlds that had never known council rule. 5 years after the war's end, Ambassador Helen Foster stood on the observation deck of Alliance Station, watching ships from dozens of species working together in the vast construction yards. The galaxy was building its first truly voluntary interstellar government. "Look at what we've accomplished," Dr. Paul Johnson said as he joined her at the viewing port. "A galaxy where diversity is strength, where species choose their own path, and where no one can force another to submit." The final scene took place in a classroom aboard the station, where children from multiple species learned together about their shared history and bright future. Human Kethmar Yildan,